yeah, this should be it, boys. A little more here in Everlook. Might be the final quest. It probably will be enough. And if it's not, we have another quest ahead in. And that should be level 60 right here.
Yes, you have returned. I believe now that you are a true hunter by nature. You have faced the most ferocious of creatures and have returned, surpassing my expectations. You are now ready for my final request. In northern Winterspring, great cats assemble around a large landmark called Frost Saber Rock. The leader of these cats is known by the name Shai Rotom.
And now after level 60, I'm gonna make a guide on how you can do it as well. We're gonna talk about some standard stuff, spells, talents, items and stats, and professions. But throughout my years, I have learned so much about this class that I'm willing to share with you, so hope you stay tuned for some extra nice tips. So let's get into it. So let's talk about some spells. In solo and in group content, it is very important as a paladin to use your spells effectively. They have long cooldowns and they're very restrictive and hard to use. So for example, you have many blessings, but you can always only use one, and deciding which one is the best for you. If you need some extra damage with Blessing of Might, if you want some extra mana regeneration with Wisdom, or just the pure stats of Kings, is for you to decide on what you're doing right now, what gear you have, what build you're playing, and what the different circumstances are in your playthrough. Also, deciding which seal to use is not always that easy. I mean, Righteousness will give you more damage, but Wisdom or Light could give you some extra healing, or mana and sustain. So I'm not gonna go over what blessing and seal you should use at any point in your run, because, well, it's just important to remember that Might and Righteousness or Might and Command is not always the best combo. So what I want to focus a little bit more on is the auras. Why? Well, because people don't really think about auras, they usually just run with Devo and that's it. But if you truly want to min-max your character and get the best out of it, I would truly recommend you to think more about the auras you select. So of course, there is Devotion Aura. Devotion Aura we usually use a lot because it just gives you more armor, but there is more to it than that. Devo Aura is usually always good, and that's why a lot of paladins use them consistently and most of the time. But just one thing to remember is, the higher your base armor is, the less Devotion Aura is gonna give you in terms of damage reduction. However, if you have a low base armor value, because you wear a lot of cloth gear for example, the flat value of Devotion Aura is gonna be higher in terms of percentages. But if you have a high armor value and you're going out in the world and farming mobs, maybe Red Aura would be better for you. You might not think that the little damage Red Aura does on every attack the mobs give you is actually worth it. But especially if you're playing a bit of a tankier build with Prot or Holy, it can add up a lot and increase your kill speed. Especially if you're killing green mobs, this is just gonna give you a little bit more damage, with the damage reduction from Devotion Aura not being necessary. Concentration Aura is used so rarely and I don't understand why. It is so powerful not to get knocked back and pushed back while casting healing spells. It's so underrated. And we're gonna talk about it in the talent section, but there is a talent called Spiritual Focus in the Holy Tree, and it is the most busted talent that a Paladin and Hardcore can get. And if you combine Spiritual Focus with 5 points and Concentration Aura, you have a 100% chance not to get pushbacked if a mob hits you. And that is phenomenal. So do not underestimate the value of Concentration Aura, because it can legitimately give you free cast heals. And you can do that in solo content as well as in group content, because people don't hold aggro that well. And healing gives you a lot of aggro. And if you have Concentration Aura and Spiritual Focus, you're not gonna get interrupted. And another thing a lot of people underestimate are the Resistance Auras. They are so good and you should always swap to them if you're fighting a mob that is doing that specific type of damage. And we're lucky that we have Frost, Shadow, and Fire Resistance Aura, which are 3 damage types that are very common in the world. If you use these auras, it's gonna significantly reduce the damage that you take from these damage types, and it's definitely better than any other aura in that setting. Unless, of course, you want to push through a heal, then concentration aura is better. One talent we're not going to talk about in the talent section, but right now, is Aura Mastery. Simply because Aura Mastery is basically just an upgrade of your auras, so we're going to talk about it now. Now what does it do? It generally increases the effect of all of your auras by 100%. That means your Devotion aura gives you double armor, Red aura gives you double damage, and the Resistance auras, they give you double the resistance for 6 seconds. Those effects are really good. If I'm farming in the open world and I have Red aura up and I have 5 mobs hitting me, I use Holy Shield, Consecration, and Aura Mastery, and the mobs just fall over so quickly because of all the passive damage I'm doing. However, the best usage for Aura Mastery is to use it with Concentration aura, making you immune to silence and interrupt effects. This is so powerful in situations, in dungeons especially, where mobs can silence you or interrupt you, which a lot of mobs do in this game. Just using Aura Mastery while having Concentration aura up gives you a safe 6-second area where you can just free cast heals and the mob can't do anything about it. It is such a safe haven. 6 seconds of free casting is omega powerful. Do not underestimate this talent. And also just getting double armor from Devotion aura or double resistances for 6 seconds is such a good defensive cooldown. Definitely don't underestimate Aura Mastery. Hand of Freedom seems like a very weak ability because it just removes slows and roots from you. Not only is it really broken in the open world when you get netted or something, and just removing slows is super powerful as well, but where it becomes really broken is when you understand that it not only removes the slow portion of an effect, but everything else that comes with it. So for example, if you have a disease that reduces your movement speed by 33%, your casting speed by 50%, and deals a little bit of damage to you every 5 seconds, well, you can remove that with Hand of Freedom. Or the spell Slow that some mages cast onto you not only reduces your movement speed, but also casting and attack speed. And it is detrimental to remove these effects. In earlier levels, you're not going to have an MD effect, a magic dispel. And as long as you don't have that, Hand of Freedom is the only thing that can remove these effects. And not only that, the big advantage of Hand of Freedom is not only that it removes one effect, but all effects and keeps it that way. It's a free run and it removes everything, as you see in the clip behind. You can see that on my tank there is a Frostbolt effect and the slow effect, which is the orange one. And I use Hand of Freedom to immediately remove both. Instead of pressing Magic Dispel twice, I press Hand of Freedom once and remove both debuffs. So you can see there is Frostbolt and Slow on my tank, 2 magic effects. I click on him, Hand of Freedom in, and both are gone. Now quick tip for the Wrath of the Lich King guys, because this is not applicable to Classic, but Hand of Reckoning is not only a taunt, but also deals a little bit of damage. You can do a little bit of damage when you pull mobs with Hand of Reckoning, because they're not aggroed yet to you, so you do a little bit of damage with that. And also, it's very good to kill mobs while they are running away with Hand of Reckoning, because it has a 30-yard range. It is a very good killer of low mobs. So keep that in mind. Hand of Reckoning can be used for pulling, taunting mobs, and finishing off mobs that are running away. Hammer of Justice is one of the earliest spells the Paladin gets, and it is very powerful. An on-demand stun that you can use to peel yourself, allow yourself to heal or cast exorcism or run away, peel enemies off party members, or even interrupt bosses. It's pretty straightforward. I just recommend you using it as much as you need to. Don't be scared of just popping it to CC one mob, prevent him from casting a Shadow Bolt or something. In a party setting, you can also use the taunt to grab enemies and CC them with Hammer of Justice if they're hitting squishies, if they ass pulled or something. Turn Evil is a spell severely underutilized by Paladins, allowing you to fear undead or demon mobs for 20 seconds which basically allows you to cast a Warlock Fear or a Polymorph on them. It has a cast time and quite short range, however, it is still a very strong CC tool and is one of the reasons why Paladins are so good against demons and undead. So don't forget about this ability, even in dungeons it can be very powerful. Also, Holy Wrath is the Giga Undead and Giga Demon counter. It deals a huge amount of AoE damage to everything close to you that is demon or undead, and it stuns them for 3 seconds. It is ultimately powerful, and with Exorcism, Holy Wrath, and Turn Evil, you are an absolute machine when killing demons and undead. And that is why you might want to focus on these mob types if you're grinding mobs or even deciding on which location to quest in. It might be better to quest in Plaguelands instead of going to Searing Gorge or Burning Steppes because, well, you're just gonna fight mobs which you're very strong against. As you can see in the background, Judgment of Justice is extremely powerful when solo questing or in groups. It allows you to prevent mobs from running away, and that is just so good in hardcore. You should definitely consider using Judgment of Justice on all humanoid mobs or other mobs that run away. It is definitely better to have control over mobs than healing or giving a little bit of mana to yourself. Last but not least, I want to talk about Cleanse. Cleanse is a spell that you get at level 42, and it removes one disease, poison, and magic effect from the target, which can also be yourself or party members. It is so powerful to be able to remove magic effects from targets and yourself, so definitely keep in mind that you can do that at a certain point. And of course, before that, you're able to remove poisons and diseases, which is still really good. And remember that you can use Hand of Freedom to remove specific effects from you. Divine Shield also cleanses most of them. One more general tip that is extremely important is the ability to LOS. Line of sight. If mobs are casting at you and you run around a corner or behind a pillar, the cast of the mob cannot go through and it is interrupted. So here I pull the boss and he starts casting at me, so I LOS it. And then I kite him out to my teammates. Gets taunted off, I start healing. And instead of sitting there and casting my heal through, I see that fear is casted on me, and I run around the corner to avoid the cast. Then I continue healing and I see that my tank is asleep, so I cleanse him. So after seeing what we can do in the dungeon, it is very important to talk about LOSing in the open world, and you can see me fighting the 5 pillagers here, pulling multiple at the time because of the escort quest that I'm doing solo right here for Deadmines. So you can see how I position very smartly, and you can do this in dungeons as well, where you position in a way where you know the mobs are going to cast at you, but you use the obstacles in their way to interrupt their cast. And this of course takes a lot of planning. And you can see I've used the carriage before and now I use this pillar, and I keep pulling mobs with my Hand of Reckoning and I LOS them to get them to me. And I can essentially kill all of these mobs without really getting hit. So keys to LOSing: have a good oversight of what mobs cast and what obstacles you can put in their way. So stay close to walls that you can run around them in an instant, like I did in the clip before. And it's usually worth to LOS spells and to stop healing or stop DPSing for a second, just because you generate so much value with LOSing. Not getting hit by a big damage fireball and not getting hit by mana burn or a CC spell just saves globals and generates damage. So keep in mind that you should LOS at every possible opportunity. Oh! Shit! Yeah, concentration. As you can see, hardcore is a dangerous place, and we can never be safe. So let's check out the talents that can make our run a little safer. Enough with spells. Now we're gonna talk about talents. First, we're gonna talk about the classic talents, and later on the wrath talents in a quick section. First of all, it's important to say that the Paladin does not really need any level 40 ability or even any level 30 ability because his talents are mostly supportive. So that means that we can mix and match our specs however you want, and that allows us a lot of flexibility, but also a lot of utility, which we're gonna focus on when playing hardcore because, well, even if you go full red, which would look like this, it means that you're just gonna do a little more damage with red aura and with seal command, a little bit of crit chance, and some extra damage with vengeance. But getting the utility out of the other specs is also worthwhile. A talent that every paladin needs in hardcore, no matter the skill level, is spiritual focus. It allows you to cast healing spells without getting pushed back by mobs 70% of the time. It just allows you to cast while getting hit, and that is just extremely powerful. Combine it with concentration aura to have 100% free cast. You definitely need this talent, and I would recommend going in there immediately. Deciding between strength and intellect is a pretty easy choice. I would say intellect is better. Now, if we're already here, picking up consecration is just a good idea. Gives you some extra damage and allows you to fight multiple mobs. Now next up, we need to decide, do we want to go into Seal of Command or into hit rating? Now usually I recommend going readout and then precision. Why? Well, because hit rating is very, very powerful in World of Warcraft, and also readout is a very, very powerful talent because you're gonna carry shields around most of your time as a paladin. You're maybe not gonna wear them all the time, but if you wear them, you will need readout just to have that extra mitigation. And as I said, hit is just really good. So you can go down to Blessing of Kings or Shield spec, and if you do so, I recommend going Guardian's Favor. It just reduces the cooldown of your Blessing of Protection, which is very, very good, and increases the duration of freedom. Both very strong. If you want to use Kings, do so. Shield spec is also worthwhile. The other stuff in the prot tree, they are not that good. Reckoning, of course, quite nice, and the one-handed spec also quite nice. However, going down here as the next step for the usual paladin with a two-hander is not the most interesting thing. Now, what I would go here in a standard situation is Benediction, Judgment, 3 in Deflection, and then get the Seal of Command. Seal of Command is a very, very strong seal if you have a good weapon. The better your weapon, the more Seal of Command is going to do because it deals 70% of weapon damage. Then you can decide between Convenience, which is movement speed in Pursuit of Justice, Combat Power and Conviction, or you can go for something entirely different and respec at 40. We're just going to continue for now. I would say you would go Conviction here, 4 points, 2 into Improved Red Aura. It's a huge damage boost, and from that point on you're only going to use Red Aura unless you want to use the Resistance Auras or Concentration Aura. 1 more into Conviction, 2 more Pursuit of Justice, 3 into 2-handed weapon spec, another 2 in Deflection, and then basically finish up the game with Vengeance and Repentance, and then you are at the standard build that I've shown you. This of course works. You can go deeper into Holy to get to Illumination and Divine Favor, also Holy Power, very, very good for healing dungeons. Holy Shock in Classic is not that good, but you can of course still use it. You can respec at 40 to get Holy Shield, which allows you to AoE mobs down very efficiently. And that would look something like this if you want to go for a tanky spec. These 3 points are mostly important for tanking dungeons, but you could also put them into Toughness, Anticipation, or Improved Hammer of Justice. So closing up the vanilla talents, I really recommend Divine Intellect, Spiritual Focus, and Consecration. These are extremely powerful and I recommend everybody to get it. Also, Readout and Precision are extremely strong. If you want to play a two-hander, Seal of Command all the way down to Vengeance is a very, very powerful spec. And if you want to focus on healing dungeons or are in a duo, I can only recommend going towards Divine Favor and Holy Power because these are really powerful. Going over to Wrath, same thing applies. Spiritual Focus is extremely powerful, only that now going down the entire Holy Tree is extremely strong. I can only recommend it. I leveled Holy all the way to level 55. And overall, it is much more worthwhile in Wrath to follow down the path of the spec because the talents down here are extremely powerful. So the same thing applies. Spiritual Focus is extremely important. The hit talent is missing in the protection tree, but something to definitely think about is Ardent Defender. It prevents you from dying, and that is just giga broken, of course. Now when it comes to stats and items, I just want to do a quick overview of the stats in the game. Because we're not going to specifically talk about most items, I want you to understand how stats work, what is good, and what is worth more than other things. So first of all, let's talk about what stats actually do. Stamina gives you 10 HP and 25 armor equals about 1 stamina. However, armor reduces in value the more armor you have, and stamina has always the same value. And always remember that the more damage reduction you have, the more valuable every HP point is going to get. So I would generally value stamina as even more than 25 armor if I have a high armor count already. However, intellect I think is the king of the paladin, because intellect gives you 15 mana, and mana is converted so nicely into health that it effectively just does more than a point of stamina. Strength, of course, gives you attack power, and 14 attack power equals to 1 DPS. So that means that if you have a weapon that deals 50 DPS and a weapon that deals 51 DPS, but the 50 DPS weapon has an additional 14 attack power on it, they're just as good. And of course, there's crit, hit, and spell and healing power, and these stats are of course really, really good. If you can grab them in the later levels, pick them up. Healing power gear is very good for healing dungeons, but of course I think intellect is still better. So overall I would say that strength and int are about on the same value, but I really love a high intellect pool and a high health pool because the resources you have you can use to generate a lot of value when you play a paladin. And then one side note, I didn't mention agility. Agility gives you armor and crit, and that means for us it's not that good of a stat. However, if you have a piece with 10 agility and a piece with 2 strength, I would definitely pick up the agility because you can say it is worth to have 3 agility instead of 1 strength for you to kind of orient yourself. You can do the same with intellect. I think 3 agi is better than 1 intellect, and 3 agi is probably better than 1 stamina, but you will get a feel of it. But knowing this is just a good basis. And just a quick thing for armor, definitely understand that big stats is better than big armor, but keep track of your damage reduction. If it falls below, let's say, 25%, you are at a pretty low amount of damage reduction, man, and you should probably pick up some more armor because it has a lot of value for you. And if you have a low amount of armor, Devo Aura has massive value. Don't forget that. Now, concerning items and stats, we of course have to talk about Varigan's Fist. It is the most rewarding and insanely strong weapon that you're ever going to get. You need to go into 3 dungeons, which is Deadmines, SFK, and Blackfathom Deeps. And you need to do an elite quest in Lokmodan. If you want a further guide, just Google on the internet. Or of course, if you want a video guide, you can of course ask in the comments. I'm gonna make a quick one for that. And as you can see, the Tome of Valor quest is running in the background. It is quite tough. Bring food, potions, drinks, and bandages. And having spiritual focus and consecration at that point already will benefit you severely. Now let's talk professions. I can recommend 2 for hardcore paladins. There's alchemy and engineering. The other ones, they have a very low impact on your leveling. Blacksmithing is too slow, and the other ones, they don't really make sense. Now for engineering, there are really 2 reasons to go for it. there's the target dummy, and there are grenades that CC mobs and deal AoE damage. Both of these things are extremely powerful, and if you use them correctly, it will reduce your chance of dying in sticky situations by a lot. The other option is alchemy, and that basically gives you an unlimited supply of mana potions and of healing potions at any level range. Also, there are other potions that you can use, like lesser invisibility potions to skip mobs that you don't want to hit, or protection potions, which you can find in the open world at specific vendors, and they are extremely powerful, as you can see. Then there are elixirs. Some just give you more defensive stats, like armor, or they give you aggressive stats like strength. And then they are the most beloved wisdom and greater intellect. These two are so powerful, and I ran alchemy just because of them and the unlimited supply of potions. You can just pot without thinking about it, and that is just great. Not having to manage your pots and just make a fuck ton of them is so valuable in hardcore, where greed can kill you quickly. So I do recommend both. I ran with alchemy because of the potions and the intellect elixirs. However, usually engineering is just better. And at the end, I just want to share some final tips with you. First of all, remember the 5-second rule and use it to your advantage. You only regenerate mana if you do not cast spells for 5 seconds. So it might be smarter not to judge the mob down, but to just finish it with an extra auto attack, or to front load all of your spells. So cast the seal, judge, cast the other seal, hammer of justice, and then just keep hitting the mob until it's dead. And just before you pull the next mob, you holy light, and then you pull, seal, judge, and do the same thing. Remember that if you cast, you're going to remove your mana regeneration from spirit, and that is going to reduce your mana pool, which is a risk, and it reduces your efficiency. Also remember that if you heal yourself or cast exorcism, for example, that you're going to interrupt your swing timer, and it takes some extra time for the next swing to happen. Never go into fights with low health or low mana, but rather drink up. You can use bandages to get back to health while out of combat, so you keep regenerating mana. And you can do the same thing while under the effect of Hand of Protection or Divine Shield. Using the bandage in that state is going to heal you fully, and you can regenerate mana while healing. Always keep a shield and a one-hander on yourself, even though you're playing with a two-hander, because running away with a shield on is going to give you a lot more damage reduction from armor and allows you to block attacks, which is extremely powerful and increases your survivability by a lot. Keep a shield around. And finally, remember that using your cooldowns aggressively is going to kill you. If you bubble to get out of a fear or polymorph that really you didn't have to get out of, might just kill you a minute later because you have forbearance. So that is pretty much it. If you have any questions concerning the Paladin or the Hardcore Challenge or the Hardcore Paladin specifically, just leave a comment below and I will answer your questions in the comments or in another video. If you liked the video, give it a thumbs up, and thanks for watching. Stay holy, boys.